and welcome to ESO Daily. Today we will be going over a recap of the Dragon Knight Healer, or what I would like to call the Dragon Priest build. Now, it's kind of important why I'm recapping this because a lot of people have been asking, what your stats look like, how does this work, in your builds. Actually, this is probably one of my most favorite healers, and it becomes very, very useful in trial runs because what this healer does, if you're running 2 to 3 Templars, they're stepping on each other's toes with their hots. Hots will reset once the same hot is cast. So it's kind of very important that you're understanding this as a healer. And even if you're not a healer, it's kind of really important to understand that if you're running trials, because if you're running Templars with the same build and same rotation, they're basically wasting their resources. So that's why you always need only one healer in the group running healing springs, so on and so forth. So I just kind of want to put it out there. Now, that does not affect instant heals like Breath of Life, so I definitely want to put that out there first and foremost. But I definitely want to go over this build, kind of recap it, and show you guys what the build is like, and we will go into the champion points here. Okay? Okay, sorry about the interruption, and here we go. Okay, first off, I'm going to show you guys my character sheet. Now, this is with my food buff, and with the max magicka, we are sitting at 40,379, and max health, it's 18,700. Now, I know I like to keep around 20k, but when I actually go to my back bar, we are at the 20k and the max magicka lowers down. Now we will be rotating quite a bit, so that does give us that little buffer. But if I wanted to push it up a little bit, I just go ahead and glyph the difference or offset the attribute points just a tad bit. Okay? Now, when we take a look at our skills, once again, this is kind of important. It's a very specific build, and there is one minor difference in trials, and I'll go into that. First, we want to go ahead with Igneous Weapon. This is giving a buff to not only us, but to our parties. They're getting major sorcery and major brutality. This is kind of important too when your DPS knows this, because basically if they're utilizing these buffs, sometimes that can slow down their DPS, because some of the times these buffs do not deal damage initially. So if you're running this, basically, one second. Okay. Sorry about that once again, but this is kind of important that you let them know that you're running this, because they can actually slot in another damage ability. So always ask your DPS if they're having these builders up, if it incorporates their damage. If it does not, they can replace that with a different damage. Also, we're using Igneous Shield. This is the core to this build. It is a must-have. What this does is it's shielding you and your allies, absorbing the damage, and also it increases your healing because you get major mending. That is a must-have if you're going to run a Dragon Knight healer. Also, we have Obsidian Shard. Obsidian Shard heals, and it acts as a stun effect. So if you have any casters or healers that are healing, NPC healers that are healing, you can go ahead, slam them with the Obsidian Shard. It will stun them, interrupting their heals, and it will heal party members. In dungeons, I use Draw Essence. Draw Essence is great because I can use an AoE damage. It's a self-heal, and it works out really great. Now, in a trial, you actually want to replace this with Cop, or otherwise known as Circle Protection. Circle Protection is great because this is primarily a tank healer. When you're using Dragon Knight healers in trial runs, they are more focused on the tank than the party. You can use the Templars or the Nightblades to compensate for the party heals. So once again, we're pretty much focused on the tank. This alleviates a lot of responsibility from the Templars. Cauterize. Cauterize is great because what Cauterize really does for us, once we use this, it's acting, it's healing, and we're getting major prophecy, increasing spell critical. Now that is very helpful with Obsidian Shard because it acts like an instant, so that will help it crit. Okay, now we also have Magma Shell. No brainer, because what this does is shields our allies uh, and also deals damage. So once again, really good. This is a really, really, really good mitigation effect. Now over on this bar, kind of similar to what I roll with most of my healing builds. We use the Resto Staff. Okay, we have the Healing Ward. Now, if you're a healer is not using Healing Ward, I don't know what you're doing. I do not know what you're doing. I don't care what healing type you are. Healing Ward is one of the best mitigation heals in the game, hands down. Because what it does is it mitigates damage, it does with the absorption, and it heals based on the severity of the target's wound up to 300%. Okay? That's huge. So for any healer not running this, I don't know what you're thinking. You might want to take a look into this and give it a shot. If not, hey, whatever. Healing Springs, once again, even though we are not focused on healing primarily parties and raids, we throw this down on the tank. This acts like a hot. So once again, Templars don't have to use Healing Springs on the tank. That's primarily the Dragon Knight healer's role. So they're not overlaying, it's not causing a conflict, and you can go on and you can regen some of that mana back. Combat Prayer, you only need one person in your party running this. Typically, I like to run it because I used a lot of dungeons. It heals, and it also gives us our buff. Also, in our Dragon Knight passive, when we activate Dragon Knight abilities, we're also getting the offset buffs with this, and I'll get into that. Mutagen. Mutagen's great because what it does a heal, and it also has a purifying effect. Inner Light, that gives us a little bit boost up towards our magic, and Reviving Barrier. Reviving Barrier is great because this is going to affect your entire party. Kind of works similar to Magma Shell, but if I'm going to be in a trial and they need me to run Warhorn, I can do that. I just have to figure out which one I'm going to switch. A lot of healers will have the Barrier, so I'll go ahead and usually switch out Barrier for Warhorn. Okay, now when we want to look at our passives, Earth and Heart is our major tree for most of our healing. Okay, we increase the duration of Earth and Heart abilities by 20%. Also, when we activate an ultimate ability, it increases our health, magic, and stamina amounts by 70% of the ultimate's cost. That comes in handy, especially when we're running low. Mountain's Blessing. Once again, this is kind of a really good one because this is the one that also buffs our allies. So it gives minor brutality to you and nearby allies, increasing their damage. So once again, that is very, very useful. Helping Hands, it also restores the stamina. So when you're using the Circle of Protection, it's not draining all of your resources. So every time you activate Earth and Heart, you're getting that increase to stam regen. Okay, now the one offset that we also have in here is the Cauterize. You'll find that in the Ardent Flame all the way at the bottom, and that is the Morph. Once again, we take a look at Combustion. Even though we're not dealing damage, we have everything unlocked. Okay, but damage is, you know, our secondary concern at this point. Okay, once again, in our Restoration Staff abilities, we have everything unlocked. I don't use Force Siphon, though a lot of Sorcerer healers do, and it does come in handy for their builds. I just typically do not run that. When we take a look at the gear, now this is very, very important because this is a trial setup. So we're running a 5-5 switch with Kaggers and, of course, the Mara set. Mara is on the Restoration Staff. So if you take a look here, I have 5 Eyes of Mara. This is kind of important because it reduces the cost of Restoration Staff abilities. As you see on my